Let me tell you my story. I said my name being Luna. There's a crucial one, but it's not easy to tell. To anybody who may be going through the same thing, I hope it is a comfort. I am a high school teacher and currently reside in Austin, Texas, where my story begins. On a dating site, I met Daniel, an Uber driver, when I was 32 years old. He was 34 years old. We had an instant connection. I was captivated by Daniel's laid-back demeanor and his talent at making me giggle. 3 years ago, we tied the knot, and life was blissful for a bit. Both he and I were infatuated with each other. At first, it wasn't a problem that I was making more money than Daniel. He appeared sincere in his support and consistently complimented my career. I did, however, observe gradual transformations in him as time progressed. Subtle remarks became sarcastic, and he became increasingly domineering. Initially, I disregarded it, considering the possibility that I might be being excessively sensitive. As Daniel's actions evolved, our issues intensified. Assuming I would foot the bill, he started making lavish purchases without telling me about them. He astonished me when he charged a new TV and a plush couch to our credit card without our knowledge or consent. He casually dismissed my concerns, stating, "You make good money, so it should be fine." It appeared like his parents' attitude had also taken a turn for the worst. At first, they were really kind and encouraging, offering their congratulations on our marriage and compliments on my work. But before long, they began requesting payment. Luna, my mother-in-law, would occasionally contact me by phone and say, "We saw a beautiful designer bag that we would like, and we were hoping you could assist us." They reacted angrily when I declined, saying that not even my family members had my bank accounts. How outrageous! Your employment was a major factor in our decision to get married, and now you're being so frugal. The parents of Daniel were unrelenting. They harassed me with calls, demanding things, and said I was a terrible daughter-in-law. I was already feeling overwhelmed by Daniel's decision to side with his parents rather than defend me. I started to doubt the value of this marriage when he started making sardonic remarks about our money and my salary more often. Even though this was happening, I persisted in attempting to fix things. Since we hadn't had any children yet, I even began to contemplate ending our marriage. Even though it was unpleasant to consider, breaking up with Daniel appeared to be our only option as the poison in our relationship continued to fester. No matter how many times I broached the subject of our divorce, Daniel would either ignore me or act as if it weren't happening. Things started to go downhill one day. The person who had always supported me, my father, became very sick. Doctors pronounced his condition severe after diagnosing him with advanced cardiac disease. It shattered me. Quickly making my way to the hospital, I hoped for the best but braced myself for the worst. Daniel gave me a spine-tingling reaction when I told him my dad was sick. "If you want to further burden your father, who is already ill, with our divorce, I'm fine with that," he remarked without showing any compassion. "At any point, we can move forward." Both shock and heartbreak overcame me. Who could be so heartless towards someone I cared about? The stress in our family became intolerable as my father's health deteriorated. Both Daniel's attitude and the frequency of his demands became increasingly uncaring. The subject of our finances came up, and he even dropped hints about how much he stood to gain from my father's death. Upon my father's passing, I was bequeathed $70,000. I have chosen to keep this bequest a secret. I preferred that Daniel remain unaware of it. He might try to con me into parting with the cash or use it for something I didn't approve of. That was my worst dread. He was adding stress to my already heavy grief. Unfortunately, my efforts to conceal the bequest were unsuccessful. My mother was threatened by Daniel, who then found the money. A devastating betrayal occurred when he forced her to divulge the facts of the bequest. Daniel immediately set out to establish a strategy for the distribution of the funds. He planned to make changes to our house without asking me beforehand, reasoning that he should be free to do as he liked since it was his property. I lost my cool. Having Daniel manage the funds that were to be my father's legacy was the last thing I wanted. It was time for me to deal with the problem directly, I thought. However, Daniel had already begun the restoration plans with the inheritance money as if it were his own, so I had no time to collect my thoughts and talk to him about it. The gravity of the situation was mounting. I had to move swiftly if I wanted to protect myself against additional greed and deception. I married a man who had transformed from a caring and supportive partner into a dominating and manipulative opportunist. Even though they had appeared nice at first, his parents were now just as terrible as everyone else. It was obvious that I would have to make some tough choices. The weight of everything that had transpired was heavy on my heart. I had to face the matter head-on if I wanted to get my peace and honesty back. Even though I didn't know what was ahead, I was hell-bent on getting out of this jam and shielding myself from the poison that had consumed me. Continuing from my last point, the situation deteriorated further following Daniel's revelation of the $70,000 bequest. His demeanor grew more hostile, as if he believed the money was legitimately his to govern. I felt stuck, and I was having a hard time dealing with both my loss and Daniel's increasing demands. One evening, I came home to find Daniel waiting for me, a smug expression on his face. "Luna, we need to talk about the renovations," he said, his voice dripping with entitlement. I knew he had already started planning, and the thought of him using my father's money without my consent made me fume. "What renovations?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't discuss anything with me." Daniel waved his hand dismissively. "We've been living in that old house for too long. It's time for an upgrade, and I've decided to use the inheritance for it." I felt my heart race. The inheritance is not for renovations. It's my money, and I want to decide what to do with it. He laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Oh, come on, we both know it's for the benefit of our home. Why are you being so selfish?" I tried to explain that I needed to handle the inheritance carefully and that his actions were disrespectful, but he cut me off. "You're always making everything about you. This money is going to make our home better. Why can't you just support me for once?" Daniel's arrogance was unbearable. He had no respect for the fact that this money came from my father's estate and was supposed to be a tribute to his memory, not a tool for his personal gain. The next few days were filled with tension. I tried to keep a low profile, hoping the situation would somehow resolve itself, but Daniel's demands and manipulations didn't stop. He began making aggressive phone calls to contractors and started making plans for extensive renovations using the inheritance money he'd had no right to. The situation reached a boiling point when Daniel confronted me about the property documents related to the inheritance. He demanded to know where I had kept them, insisting he needed to access the money. I was stunned. How could he be so brazen? "I'm not going to let you control this money," I said firmly. "I'm keeping everything in my name. You have no right to it." Daniel's face darkened. "If you don't hand over the documents, I'll make sure everyone knows how you've been holding out on me. Do you really want to deal with that kind of trouble?" His threats were hollow, but they made me realize just how far he was willing to go. I decided I needed to take action before things escalated further. It wasn't long before Daniel's manipulative tactics took another turn. He started involving his parents more directly in the situation. They began calling me regularly, demanding I hand over the inheritance or they would take legal action. Their tone was accusatory and confrontational, showing no sympathy for my situation. Their demands were so intense that I decided I had to take a stand. I consulted a lawyer to understand my rights and options. I learned that I had legal protections and that Daniel's behavior could be classified as financial abuse. The inheritance, being part of my father's estate, was legally mine to manage. Meanwhile, Daniel's actions became more desperate. He began plotting ways to access the property documents related to the inheritance. He even went as far as to threaten my mother, trying to intimidate her into giving him the information he wanted. It was a new low, and it made me realize just how toxic and dangerous the situation had become. One day, I returned home to find Daniel in the process of tampering with the property documents. He had managed to sneak into my office and was rifling through the files. When he saw me, he tried to cover up his actions with a look of feigned innocence. "I was just looking for something," he said, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. "This is my father's property," I said coldly. "You have no right to it. You're crossing a line." Daniel's face turned red with anger. "You're being unreasonable. This is about improving our life together. Why can't you see that?" "I see it very clearly," I retorted. "You're trying to exploit my father's legacy for your own gain. This has to stop." The confrontation left me shaken, but resolute. I knew I had to protect myself and the inheritance from further manipulation. The thought of Daniel using the money for his personal projects while I struggled to maintain control over something that was rightfully mine was overwhelming. As I prepared to move forward with divorce proceedings, I realized I had to deal with the aftermath of Daniel's manipulations. I had to secure the property documents and make sure that nothing was done to jeopardize the inheritance or my father's memory. The situation was reaching a critical point, and I knew that I needed to be strong and decisive. I had to make sure that I didn't let Daniel's greed and manipulation ruin my life any further. The road ahead was going to be difficult, but I was determined to reclaim my peace and protect what was rightfully mine. As I braced myself for the inevitable clash with Daniel, the tension in our home became unbearable. Every day was a struggle, and the atmosphere was charged with hostility. Daniel's actions had reached new lows, and his arrogance was pushing me to the edge. I knew I had to take decisive action before things spiraled further out of control. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, I decided it was time to confront Daniel about his blatant disregard for the inheritance. I found him lounging in the living room, looking relaxed despite the chaos he had caused. His casual demeanor only fueled my frustration. "Daniel, we need to talk," I said firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. He glanced up from the television with a dismissive look. "What now, Luna? I'm tired of your games. I began, the inheritance is not yours to use for renovations or anything else. It's my money, and I will decide what to do with it." Daniel rolled his eyes. "You're being unreasonable. We're supposed to be a team. Why can't you just let me make our home better?" "It's not about the house," I replied, fighting to keep my composure. "It's about respect and boundaries. You have no right to claim what doesn't belong to you." Daniel's face hardened. "You're just being selfish. You know how much this means to me. Why are you making this so difficult?" His words stung, but I refused to back down. "I'm not being selfish. I'm standing up for myself. You've already tried to intimidate my mother and tamper with the property documents. I'm not going to let you get away with it." The confrontation left both of us simmering with anger. Daniel stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I was left alone, feeling a mix of fear and determination. I knew I had to follow through with the divorce, but I needed to secure the inheritance first. The following day, things took a turn for the worse. I received a call from my mother, sounding frantic. "Luna, you need to come over right away. Daniel is here, and he's causing a scene." My heart raced as I drove to my mother's house. When I arrived, I found Daniel standing in the middle of the living room, shouting at my mother. The scene was chaotic, and I could see the distress on my mother's face. "Daniel, what are you doing?" I demanded as I entered the room. He turned to me with a look of wild desperation. "I need the inheritance, Luna. This is our chance to fix everything. Don't you see that?" I could barely contain my anger. "You have no right to demand anything from me. This is my father's money, and I'm not giving it to you." Daniel's frustration reached a boiling point. "You're being unreasonable and cruel. I need that money for a future. Why are you making this so hard?" "Because it's not yours to take. I shouted back. "You're making a scene and threatening my family. This has to stop." As Daniel continued to argue, I noticed that he seemed more desperate than ever. It became clear to me that he was losing control and was willing to do anything to get his hands on the inheritance. I realized that I had to act quickly to protect myself and my family. The situation escalated further when I found out that Daniel had stolen the property documents related to the inheritance. He had taken them from my home, hoping to sell the property without my knowledge. I was horrified and felt violated. I contacted my lawyer immediately and informed him of the theft. He advised me to file a police report and take legal action to protect the property. I followed his advice, and the authorities began investigating the situation. The thought of Daniel potentially getting away with his deceit was unbearable, but I knew I had to see this through. Despite his attempts to manipulate and intimidate me, Daniel's plans were thwarted. It turned out that the property title was still in my father's name, making it impossible for him to sell it without legal complications. This news seemed to deflate him, and he began to backtrack, attempting to reconcile. One day, Daniel showed up at my parents' house, his demeanor a mix of anger and desperation. "Luna, please, I'm sorry for everything. I just wanted to make things better for us. Can't we work this out?" I looked at him coldly. "It's too late for apologies. You've crossed too many lines. The inheritance isn't cash, it's property, and you can't touch it." His face fell as he realized that his plans had failed. He tried to salvage what he could, but I was resolute. The damage was done, and I was determined to move forward. As the legal proceedings continued, Daniel faced mounting pressure. The investigation into his theft of the property documents revealed his attempts to exploit the situation. The news spread, and his reputation, as well as that of his parents, began to suffer. They faced public embarrassment and financial troubles, adding to the pressure on them. Through all this, I remained focused on my goal. The divorce proceedings were initiated, and I was determined to protect my inheritance and my peace of mind. It was clear that Daniel's greed and manipulation had led to his downfall, and I was determined to see this through to the end. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional turmoil, with Daniel's attempts to manipulate the situation exposed. The pressure on him mounted. I was determined to keep moving forward, no matter how difficult it was. My lawyer and I worked tirelessly to ensure that everything was in order and that the property was legally protected. One afternoon, while I was sorting through some paperwork at my mother's house, the phone rang. It was my lawyer, and his voice was grave. "Luna, I have some news. Daniel has been arrested for theft." The shock hit me hard. I had hoped that the legal process would bring resolution, but hearing that Daniel had been arrested was a stark reminder of how far things had deteriorated. My lawyer explained that Daniel's attempt to sell the property illegally had been uncovered, leading to his arrest. It was a significant step in holding him accountable for his actions. A conflict of emotions, including relief and despair, washed over me. We were relieved that someone was finally taking action, but we were sorry that the relationship that had seemed so promising had ended. Despite everything, I was hoping for a different outcome, preferably one in which we could have worked out our differences peacefully. His parents became the center of attention as word of Daniel's arrest circulated. Because to their son's behavior, they were embarrassed in public and had financial problems. They desperately reached out to me, hoping to find some hope among the rubble, and their desperation was obvious. The mother of Daniel pleaded with me from the bottom of her heart. "We are in a very precarious situation, Luna. Please lend us a hand. Our world has been shattered by Daniel's deeds, and we are at a loss as to how to rebuild." I listened to her phone call but had no desire to be of service. It was too much to bear for my loved ones and myself. I had finally had enough with Daniel and his family's avarice and manipulation. Taking care of myself and getting some rest were top priorities. I said firmly, "I'm sorry, but I'm unable to assist you. I must put this behind me and go on. What Daniel did was terrible. That part of my life has come to an end. I felt empowered and challenged by the finality of my decision. For my own healing, I decided it was best to cut ties with Daniel and his family. Getting away from the poisonous people and situations that had ruined my life for a long time was the only way to start over. The sale of my family's home was the following step after Daniel's arrest and the seizure of the property. I had to make the tough choice for my own happiness, even if it hurt. We moved away from the troubled past and the memories that had plagued my mother and me. The relocation served as a metaphor for starting over, for letting go of the past. It was liberating and relieving to finally be in our new house. My burden from the past was beginning to lighten, and I could turn my attention to putting my life back together. What was once an argument over my inheritance is now a representation of my fortitude and perseverance. It served as a timely reminder of the need of setting healthy boundaries and honoring one's own worth. My marriage and the inheritance turned out to be about more than simply avarice and deception. It was about having the guts to do what I believed in and defend myself. It was all about getting my life back and finding happiness again. In spite of everything that had happened, Daniel's arrest signified the closing of a sad chapter and the start of a new adventure. I vowed to welcome this next phase of my life with optimism and enthusiasm. Ultimately, I would be able to put this ordeal behind me and use the wisdom I gained to create a life I love. Thinking back on it all, I learned that having strong boundaries and respecting oneself are the most important things. I arrived at a position of more clarity and self-awareness after enduring a challenging path. With the past in the past and the future in front of me, I am excited about the prospect of a life full of progress and positivity. The opportunity to build a life in which I may find genuine contentment made the difficult path worthwhile.